everybody. Welcome to the Her Voice Up podcast. My name is Amma Akoto. Today we are joined by Amma Asiedua Akoto. Thanks so much for joining us today, Amma.
Hi, excited to be here. It's been a long time coming.
Fantastic. Cool. So Amma Asiedua Akoto is a management lecturer at the BPP University. As an expert in her field, she combines cutting-edge research with dynamic teaching and a commitment to empowering her students through mentorship. So you seem to have a very unique career. Can you walk us through how you began this path in higher education?
Certainly. So I started off my career as a business data analyst, basically, and working for a telco for about a year and a half. Following from that, I went into software development where I was working as a product manager. So it was basically being like an intermediary between developers and our customers and trying to figure out the right fit in terms of products that we wanted to roll out. So after having done that for a while, then I decided to take a break and do my own postgraduate studies. So went to do my master's, and that was when I really started to develop a keen interest in customers, how to generate customer insights using data, because remember, I did have that background. So it was good to marry those things together. So went into customer success management and then into operations. So while I was doing operations, which was primarily partner management or client management. While I was doing that, I got an email one day from a recruiter who said, there's this lecturer position open for master's students. Are you interested in it? So I remember just taking a quick glance through the email, looking at the skills, expertise, and everything that they needed, and just, sort of chucking it to the side. So I was like, this is not something I've really ever thought of doing. So I didn't necessarily give it much thought at the time. The days following up to that and the weeks, sort of started to pop in my mind here and there. I was thinking, this wouldn't be a bad career choice because throughout my career, I've also done a lot of things that's related to teaching. So I've done volunteering where I was teaching, tiny primary school kids who were orphans. I've also done some tutoring. So while I was doing my master's, I worked part-time as a tutor for, again, students or university students who had learning disabilities. And that gave me the opportunity to visit a lot of different universities across London. So University of Westminster, University of Law. I was in all sorts of classes. I would be in a law class one day. The next day, I'd be in a fashion class or a music production class. So that was a very exciting time, and that also gave me some exposure to higher education besides my personal experience. So moving on from that, the recruiter did reach out to me again and said, we're looking at your background and it seems like you would be a good fit for this type of role because we're really looking for people who are grounded in industry who can then bring that experience on board into teaching. So that's when, I said to her, what, let's start talking about it. Let's see what this is all about. And then my interest grew. And it was also at the point where I really wanted to have more impact than I thought I was having at the time. And I'm sure we'll talk about that more later. So I was like, this would really afford me the opportunity to mentor people, to train people. Then I was doing a lot of training with internal staff. A lot of demoing with our external clients. Okay, so I was always in a teaching capacity anyways. It just wasn't, in front of a group of students in a classroom. So I realized I had a lot of skills that I could transfer into the field of lecturing. And I also had that passion and interest there. So that's how it all started for me. Went through the recruitment process and here we are now. So I've now been teaching on a master's program at BPP University, as you mentioned, for a little over a year now. Absolutely everything, or even more than what I thought it would be.
Nice. So would you then say that your passion like for teaching them to develop through the extra stuff you did like
100%. Yeah, I would definitely say that because the first teaching experience that I got, I think this was when I was in my undergrad and I was probably in my first or second year. And it
right.
was just for a couple of weeks. It was like a volunteering one and primary school kids. And I remember how attached I got to those kids that by the time it was supposed to end, I was still doing it. I broke down in tears on the very last day. And that was when, I realized that, okay, this is something that I have a knack for. This is something that I can do. I've always been like a good communicator, so very great at presentations, if I do say so myself, or like public speaking and things like that. So in terms of like the skills that go along with teaching, I have that, both the hard and soft skills as well. So all these little experiences started to really, really develop my passion for teaching. Even when I was tutoring, a part of the work that I was doing with the students with learning disabilities, sometimes it's just about helping them take their notes. Sometimes it was about sitting down and helping them structure their assessments and putting together their materials, depending on the type of learning disability that they had. So
Okay.
all of those things, although at the time I thought, just doing this part-time role
Yeah.
just to earn something, that I can fall back on. But I didn't know that it was literally my steps being aligned for this, bigger picture. Now it all makes sense now and it's all
Yeah.
coming together in my mind. Yeah.
Cool. So I think that this point is good for the students who are tune in to today, that you don't necessarily have to be drowned in just your school work, but you basically have to explore and basically see where your different strengths are. So that is a really brilliant point. Thank you. So what do you specialize in BPP?
Okay, so I work in a business school because I'm on the management program, as I said. So this is for master's level students.
Okay.
So I do teach on a couple of modules.
Right.
But the main area where I would say I've had a lot of experience teaching in is on global strategy and sustainability. So
Right.
anything that has to do with business strategy in terms of companies expanding into foreign markets and all associated strategies that they need to be able to facilitate that move. That's the areas, or those are the type of courses and subjects that I teach on. I also do a lot of teaching on customer experience strategy. And in the
Right.
next couple of weeks, I'm actually going to be taking a lot of groups. I think the most number of groups I've ever taught that module in particular. I'm going to be focused on that a lot. So that's again also becoming an area where I'm specializing in a lot. And then there's some other modules which are more to do with like personal development and getting students to start
Okay.
thinking like about professional behavior, creative conduct, goal setting, those types of things, because they do need that as well, in addition
Yeah.
to the various concepts and frameworks and stuff like that. Yeah, so under the business school, management modules in general, but more narrowly to do with business strategy or international expansion.
Interesting. So what has kept you going in this career path?
I think what has really kept me going, I would say, it maybe might sound cliche, but definitely the passion and the interest for the field.
Right. Mm-hmm.
Because teaching is one of those fields where if you don't have a passion for it, you don't have interest in it,
Mm.
you'll end up finding it to be very routine, very boring as time goes on.
Tedious.
You'll start with very excited, and then later
Mm-hmm.
on down the line, you might start to, second guess yourself. Should I have even come to this to begin with or not? So for me, it definitely starts off with a passion. And
Mm.
I think I mentioned this in the beginning where I was starting to also think how I could see some direct positive impact that I was having on the lives of people. So,
Mm-hmm.
outside of being in an office and
Mm.
obviously the work that I was doing mattered and I could see certain contributions, but I wanted to see that
Yeah.
direct impact on the lives of people. And
Mm-hmm.
so when I'm teaching, I'm able to do that, and I can really see how I'm affecting the lives of some of the students that I come into contact with.
Yeah.
I had this student who I remember in one class, we started to discuss TVs. That wasn't the main topic of discussion. It just came up, very casually, in
Mm-hmm.
the grand scheme of things. And I was just, we were just sharing some tips together, not just me, but with my students as well.
Mm-hmm.
And he realized that the reason why he was struggling to get a job, because he was an international student, so he realized the reason why he was struggling to get the job was the CV that he was using in the first place. So
Mm-hmm.
even though this was one of the brightest students, if you had asked me in that class, he
Yeah.
was one of the people who was really struggling. Okay, so
Mm-hmm.
he came back 2 weeks later and he said, you won't believe what happened. I took your tips, I made those changes to my CV, and now I have a job.
Oh,
Okay, and it
brilliant.
was through the little things that we discussed in class, like
Mm-hmm.
take your picture out of the template, things like that.
Mm-hmm.
The CV looks really like animated and unprofessional. Once
Yeah.
he did that, he started to make like a lot of progress in terms of finding a part-time job and all of that. I also had another student who said, I've heard of LinkedIn, I've never bothered with it, but when you spoke about it, I started to make connections. And then
Mm-hmm.
ended up with over 500 connections. He started talking to some prospective employers as well at the
Mm-hmm.
time. And now he's graduated and he has secured a job with one of those employers. So
Fantastic.
it's about those tiny victories that you see.
Yeah.
A couple of weeks ago, I met some students who were from the very, very first class that I lectured. I said Monday morning, 9 a.m., the very first class that I taught.
Oh,
And they
wow.
saw me and they all rushed and gave me a really big bear hug. And they said, we
Uh,
missed you so much. We can't believe this is the last day of our classes. We're graduating soon. And they were telling me things like, after we left your class, we never had a lecturer that we were able to connect with and bond with as much as we did with you, even
uh,
though you were strict. But we still loved your classes and all of that. So you can see the direct impact. Okay, so
mm-hmm.
on days where I'm feeling tired and I'm like, oh my gosh, another day of teaching 8 hours. When I think about my
Yeah.
students
Mm-hmm.
and the fact that they're eager to learn in
Mm-hmm.
general, most of them are, and like the
Mm-hmm.
sort of change and development that I see, in their
Mm-hmm.
lives while they're going through the courses,
Yeah.
that really, motivates me and that keeps me going. And as well, teaching is one of those professions where you're also learning as a teacher. Okay, and most of the
Yeah.
students that I teach, 95% of them are international students. I
Mm-hmm.
barely teach domestic students. Okay, so
Mm-hmm.
at BPP, when it comes to business schools, primarily international students. Where
Right.
students are coming from different backgrounds, different cultures, the education
Mm-hmm.
styles are all different. They come with all of that experience. They give me examples of companies I've never heard about before. And in
Mm-hmm.
class, I go and Google those examples and we take a look at them together and we discuss. So, in as
Mm-hmm.
much as they're learning, I dare say that I'm even learning more than they are. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
so it's a two-way thing. While you're developing the students or hoping that they are while they're going through the program, you're
Yeah.
also doing the same. So my knowledge is expanding a lot.
Mm.
So yeah.
Brilliant. Cool. That is really interesting to hear. So from what you just said, it seems like you bring them in, and you basically immerse them in basically what they have to learn, and which is great, to be honest, which is really great. So what have you found that the most effective in for strain dynamic environment for your students.
Okay, so there's different things and techniques that I use. First of all, for me, it's about the relationship that I build with students from the very first day they come into contact with me to the last class. Okay, it doesn't matter if it's a class that I'm covering or a class that's my own. Okay, most of the time I go and cover classes, and when I'm leaving, they're like, "Can you stop here? So that you're teaching us now." And it's because of the relationship that I built. Okay, so
Right.
with students, especially with the international students, you need to be able to develop some sort of rapport or relationship from the get-go. So in our intro sessions, and this was advice that I got from my mentor, who is also at BPP University, great lecturer, and she's the head of training and development as well. She said, you never want the students to feel like you're way up there and they're down here. Intro sessions, you don't want to go and start listing all the qualifications you have, all the experience you have, because then they start to look at you as, oh my gosh, this is some high mighty person who is all knowing, and they struggle to connect with you when it comes to that. So in my intro sessions, I literally just say, this is my name, this is what I'm interested in, these are my hobbies. Tell me the same thing about you. Okay, don't tell necessarily even about your background, because that will come up in our discussion. Same with mine. Because whenever I'm teaching, I always need to bring in my experience from industry, because that's where the value is. We're not teaching them textbook stuff, but we're teaching them and setting them up for their professions. Yeah. So those experiences, all of those great examples will come anyway. So it's about coming down to the level and doing basic things like, for example, when they're doing group activities, I go and I sit with them, on their tables. Sometimes if there's not a spare chair, I kneel down on days when my knees are feeling great. Anyways, I'll kneel down and I'll discuss with them. Sometimes I will share a seat with a student. So building that bond in the beginning, it really gets them to relax. And whenever they come, they feel like it's an environment where they can make mistakes. They're all there to learn. We're all there to share, and they're all willing to engage. Okay, but at the same time, you need to find that balance of, you don't want to overdo it when they feel like you're their friend.
We can cross them out.
Live in the classroom. So I don't know. I think when it comes to me, one of the things that I'm fortunate to have is that balance where they know our class is really strict, but at the same time, it's a really enjoyable class. At least if you're a student. Yeah. So building that relationship, that creates that environment where they're willing to learn, they're willing to engage. And we also try and incorporate lots of different things. And when it's time for the activity, sometimes I'll have them do a role play. Say, to the actors and actresses, go ahead, blow my mind. So we do role plays. Sometimes we do debates. We use game-based learning technology, which gets them, really competitive and excited to interact in the classroom. So it's not just about listening and noting things down. They're actually, interacting with the lessons through other things. Okay, and technology plays a big role in that as well. And then we do group activities. Sometimes we do presentations through PowerPoint. Sometimes they just sit at their desks and then they'll speak. So it's a blend of things, especially if you have a module which is 4 hours. You can only imagine. Even with the breaks in between, it can get really tiring for the students and really tiring for you as the lecturer as well. So incorporating, a mixture of, activities and stuff like that really keeps the energy in the class. And then by the time you all realize 4 hours is up, and we usually even end up going over the 4 hours. Believe you, So those are some of the things that we do to get the classroom, exciting, have students willing to participate and engage in the lesson.
Right. Interesting. So you spoke about the game changing technology that you use. Do you use any like of the new AI tools and find that they help you and your students?
Yes. So when it comes to AI and the different types of technology, so I don't know about other universities, but for my university, there's like a list of technologies that we're restricted to. So these
Okay.
are the ones that follow the company's policy. So you can't just use
Right.
any technology at all. So there's a long list of various platforms and softwares that we use. As a tutor, if you come across one that's not already in the allowed list, so to speak, you're able to submit that and say, I think this would be great technology for us to use.
Yeah.
Students, what do you think about this? And then they'll go through the necessary process and it might get approved for everyone to use or for you to use for a particular
Okay. Yeah.
Yes, but we do use a lot of technology. So yes, I mentioned game-based technology. So one popular one that we use at BPP is Kahoot.
Right.
It's really fun. And it's interesting because I used to use Kahoot in the role that I was in before I transitioned to BPP. Used it a couple of times, not as me designing, but me as a partaker in some of the quizzes. So when the shoe was on the other foot, where now I got to design activities and quizzes through Kahoot, I was like, this is a full circle moment and it's very interesting. So yes, at the start of every lesson, Kahoot is what we use to do our recap. So recap for the previous lesson. And it's more fun, it's more interesting than just asking them, what do you remember from last week? Did you find that? So this time they get to see their names on the screen. They get to even choose avatars. Sometimes they spend 5 minutes just choosing their avatars. So you can see that they're already excited to play. And in the end, it shows the scores. So it always shows who was first, who was second, who was third, and it's become a real competition. Because sometimes I will go along with gifts as well. Other times it's just the bragging rights that you get. And every time the scores come up and you try to switch the screen, they're like, hold on, Amma, you need to take a picture. So they will actually take a picture of their scores and have those bragging rights, to show to their families or on their socials or whatever the case is. So we use a lot of technology in that sense. We have a lot of other tools. So we have a platform known as the forum. And this is where, as a tutor, you can interact with students outside the class. So it could be anything from them asking questions about the assessments or us posting any announcements that we have. Sometimes if we have group activities in the class, instead of letting them present, I'll say, gather as a group and put your responses on the forum. Okay, so this is also another way to introduce like some, different experiences in the class. So it's not always one way, or they're not always expecting to present stuff, in a particular way. And this gets them more familiarized with the technology as well. On a weekly basis, I would always post a question from a topic that we've done, which requires you to research and give examples of global organizations that are following those concepts or strategies that we've discussed.
Right.
Then in classrooms, we would project those into the screens and then we'll go through the responses. Okay. But when it comes to technology, we all know that although it has a lot of great benefits, it definitely comes with disadvantages as well. So a lot of students end up becoming too reliant on like AI softwares. More drastic cases, you find that they're using it for the assessment. So the similarity checker would mark it and you see that all of your work is basically plagiarized or copied from somewhere else. And in those cases, then they face like a lot of severe consequences. But even on a smaller scale, you see them doing that in the classroom as well. Sometimes even with group activities, very basic questions that just is supposed to facilitate them discussing together and like, critically thinking through questions. You'll find that they open an AI software and it'll spit out the answers for them. So they're presenting and you hear the terminologies that they're using and I look at their faces like, you know that didn't come from you. So if you coin a dish, explain it. Because some of them will get really defensive and say, no, this is from me. I said, okay, even I have never heard of it. So let me know that. And then you catch them, guilty or red-handed at that point in time. So it's always about, constantly even reminding the students that, this technology is all great. It's there to make our lives easier. It's supposed to help and aid in your research, but it should not hinder your ability to study and produce responses independently.
Correct.
So it's about always finding that balance. But otherwise, technology yeah, it's really being relied on in education today, and you simply cannot do without it. So it's a basic thing.
Right. So do you think that they'll come at time where students will find that balance of basically doing their research via AI and not necessarily become coming dependent on it.
That's a really tough question.
Mm.
I would hope so. But honestly, and especially with how technology is becoming even more advanced,
Mm-hmm.
before when you saw like an AI generated answer, you would be able to spot it very easily. But now it's getting to a point where
Mm.
you're able to mask a lot of things. So
Right.
some students even use, I don't know if you know, like the Snapchat feature that has an AI. So it has your personal
Okay.
AI. You type any question into it, and it's also able to produce answers for you.
Ah.
So it's become very. So I think certain students they will take up their phone and they're on Snapchat, use an AI to get responses to questions that they've been asked in class. So with how advanced technology is getting, I think
Mm-hmm.
there has to be some sort of control measures that we can put in place. So that's
Yeah.
when the QA and QE, so quality assurance and quality enhancement processes of the individual universities come into play, where if
Right.
we're able to, I don't know, sort of upgrade the technologies that help us catch on to these type of things. So, for example, for
Right. Yeah.
and the
Mm-hmm.
similarity, we're able to, very easily pick it out and those type of things.
Mm-hmm.
Then I feel like the more we call students out on it, the more it will prevent them from using it.
Mm-hmm.
Otherwise, I think just because it makes their life easier, most students will just tend to resort to it. So I
Mm.
think, yeah, definitely on, for the institutions, if we start to look at different ways or processes that we can put in place to deter students from using it, then we'll be making, some progress when it comes to that.
Right. Interesting. Brilliant. So I'm interested in knowing what has been your biggest challenge as an educator in higher education, and how have you overcome these?
Biggest challenges, I would say one of them definitely is, getting to a place where you feel like the work is very routine. So
Mm.
I don't know about other institutions, and I mean some people may be part time, but I'm full time. So I
Mm-hmm.
teach a certain number of hours per week, sometimes maybe 20, 22, 24. And
Right.
that means that you'll be repeating a lot of the lessons that you're teaching.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? So I think I sort of mentioned this somewhere in the beginning where I said I'm about to teach a customer experience strategy module, and I'm going
Yeah.
to be building 12 groups every week teaching the same thing. So you can
Wow.
only imagine it's like you're delivering the same lesson over and over and over
Mm-hmm.
again. So it can get to a point where you start to feel like, you know what, my energy is just drained and you're just tired and you
Mm-hmm.
yourself become bored. That's why
Mm-hmm.
you need to think of ways that you can always make every class unique and interesting.
Yeah.
If I have 4 classes in a day, 2 hours each, delivering the same lesson, I'm not going to do it the same way for all of the classes. Otherwise, I'll start in the beginning, very
Mm-hmm.
excited, and then, afternoon time, you realize you're just waiting for
Mm-hmm.
time to pass by. And the thing about teaching in a classroom environment is when your mood is off, students pick up on it very easy. You might think that you're not transferring your energy and your mood, but you are. Okay, one
Yeah.
of the things that I had, which is very interesting when I started teaching from a senior lecturer, she said, you know what, teachers, you're almost like an actor. Like when you get into the classroom,
Mm-hmm.
you're putting on a performance.
Yeah.
You really set the tone for how things are going. So before
Mm.
I step into any classroom, if I've not had a great morning, somebody annoyed me on the train, whatever personal issues, I leave it outside of the door. And the minute where I step into the classroom, my students are my priority. The
Right.
times when I'll probably have a headache or whatever, I'm not even feeling so great, and I'm thinking, oh my gosh, this class is going to be a drag. But I get in there in some way, somehow, there's just something in my brain that switches, and you would never know that I was maybe not so well or not in such a great mood. So it's about, finding things that keep you going. As I said, deliver every class differently. So we might do the same activities all throughout as a requirement, because some of these things are embedded in the curriculum, but we will do it in a different way. So if the first group is doing it as group presentations, the next group, you're doing a role play. Okay, so there's those mixture of things. It keeps me, dare I say, entertained as well. I'm thinking, if I'm performing for you, perform for me as well. And it keeps them also excited and refreshed. So that's one of those things. Another challenge I would definitely say is student engagement. So as I mentioned, I teach a lot of international students. And sometimes because of their background, they're not used to the style of teaching and learning in the UK.
Right.
So I remember when I started, I would have some classes where they were still quiet. I'm like, do you guys want to use your voices today? Are you going to speak to me? This is not a assignment. And they would say to me, you know what? This is so different from what we know, especially from some of the Asian backgrounds. They'll say to me, we're used to going to sit in a class, the lecturer speaking from beginning to end, class is done, and we move out. We're not used to being asked questions. So at that point, I said to them, okay, now get used to it. So I do a lot of questioning in my classrooms. You're not just going to sit down and listen to me. Okay, and that has also informed my style of teaching. So the different styles and theories of teaching, where the very basic one is the transfer theory, where the teacher is basically transferring the knowledge, and the students just assimilate that, and maybe they just focus on assessment, passing that theory. And as someone who had, a lot of my education from an African country, I'm very familiar with that as well. Where you just go listen, memorize as much as you can, and hopefully you pass the exam. What sticks after sticks, what doesn't goes out the window. So that's the transfer theory. But as the tutor, you should be able to move past that to go to more of the shaping and building theories, where for me, I'm more of a guide to my students. So I'm only in the classroom to help guide you. So if you think of it as we're on a tour, I'm just the tour guide.
Right.
If you see something interesting, you say to me, oh, this is an interesting building, then I'll probably drop one nugget, and then I'll ask you questions that helps you uncover your own insights. And when students are able to do this, it sticks with them more, and also everything that we're learning becomes more practical. I also encourage them to use their examples a lot, and that's what breaks the barrier of them being able to engage or participate. But then, as a lecturer, you can prepare, have all these great examples from international businesses and global businesses that you would think everybody knows. But you mention the name of those businesses, and you will always have a handful, sometimes even maybe more students who have never heard of those companies. So they cannot relate to examples. Yeah, and that's where the relationship building aspect also comes in. So I know the regions that they're from, I get to know their backgrounds, if they have any experience, if some of them are even doing part-time jobs, in the current state where they're only studying and juggling that, and we incorporate that into the classes. So I use their own examples as a way to guide them through the topics. And then you see that straight away they begin to, interact more.
Right.
Unfortunately, at BPP, we have a culture where our students comes first. So for the lectures, it's not a competition of whose classes are better. We all share best practice. So we have catch-up calls during the week where, if something has worked for you in your class, you share that. If you're struggling with a particular group, whether it has to do with the engagement or maybe a particular concept that you're not able to grasp, you're able to ask as well. And then we all chip in. You can choose to shadow the classes of other lecturers. It doesn't matter if you've been teaching for 50 years. If you want to shadow, you just need to reach out to a colleague and say, can I shadow your class? And then once you go in there, you're also able to pick up some of the things that they're doing that's working, and then you incorporate that into your sessions as well. We also have tutor observations. So every tutor is observed at certain points in the year as part of the university's quality assurance processes. So whoever's observing would also then share their tips with you and say, I think you could have done it this way and that way, and so on and so forth. And we have a lot of trainings as well that run, concurrently throughout the academic year. So all of that helps, in terms of encouraging student participation and engagement.
These things, keep you up to date and on your toes, so that you constantly know what is going on. That is brilliant. So how do you receive feedback from your students to improve your teaching style?
Okay, so at BPP, we have what is known as a DPS, that's a daily pulse survey. So this
Right.
is a survey that is taken at the end of every single class. We
Okay.
project a QR code, students scan, and they answer questions, about 4 questions. So they give like a rating of how the class went for them, and they're able to give further comments as well. They also give a rating of how technology has been used in the class. So it's interesting that you mentioned technology. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
it's playing a huge role in teaching and learning these days, as mentioned. So they're
Mm-hmm.
able to do that, and from the back end as a tutor, you're able to review those BPS scores as well. So
Right.
if for a particular day, the BPS scores for yourself were down, then you would know why. If you're lucky enough and students have added comments, and it's very easy to pinpoint to say, this is what they didn't like, or this is what they really enjoyed that I need to keep up, doing. So the
Mm-hmm.
BPS is one of them. We also have end of module survey, so that comes at the
Mm-hmm.
very last class of the module, where we ask them to give the feedback on the entire module in general. So at that
Right.
point, they can, give feedback on certain aspects of the module that they thought could have been better and all of that. And that helps us shape the modules for students who are yet to come and start learning on those
Yeah.
modules. And there's also, slight leeway for them to also comment on the lecturer who taught them that module as well. So that's also another way of getting feedback from the students. And then, of course, there's, personal feedback, like the informal
Mm-hmm.
conversations that you have. That's
Yeah.
why I keep humming on the fact that you need to build a relationship with students. Because
Right.
if students see you as being approachable, they will,
Mm-hmm.
of course, come to you and give you the feedback.
Yeah.
If you're not approachable, they will have feedback which is very valuable, but they will never ever tell you. So I
Mm.
always remind my students, especially when sometimes some of them scan the QR code and it's not working because, again, it's technology, so it's open
Mm-hmm.
to glitches, or sometimes maybe because of the mobile phones that they're using or something, it doesn't pick up the code.
Yeah.
I say to them, you can't always come to me and give your feedback. Some of them might
Right.
not, but you also have a few that will. Okay,
Yeah.
come to you. Sometimes it's just positive feedback, but I say to them, give me the negative as well. You cannot tell me that I am perfect. So if there's
Yeah.
anything you think we can add, certainly let me know. So that's how you get your feedback, and obviously through the tutor observations that I mentioned as well, because that's a
Mm-hmm.
very sort of detailed feedback
Mm.
session where the observer follows a template, and that template is related to the UK standards of the profession. So
Okay.
they follow all of those standards. So it has to do with effective teaching, student engagement, your
Mm-hmm.
subject knowledge. There's a lot of criteria that it follows, and then you get that feedback as well when you know where you rank in terms of if
Yeah.
you're still developing, or if you're
Mm.
consolidating, or if you've reached the last stage, which is established, which is usually
Right.
where most experienced lecturers are at.
Interesting. So this is how you receive feedback from your students. So let's flip the scripts now. How do you give feedback to your students as well?
Okay, so I'll take that in two parts. So in terms of the actual assessments that they do, at BPP we have two major assessments. So there's
Okay.
one which is a formative assessment, which is more or less like a practice round.
Okay.
So there we give a lot of feedback, because the idea is they need to take on that feedback, apply it, and hopefully come up with better results in the summative assessments, which is the final assessment that they submit that actually impacts their grade. So
Right.
in that formative assessment, we give feedback on your general performance. We give you an idea of the grade band that you're falling into. We
Mm-hmm.
pinpoint areas where you did well, areas where you need some improvement, and then we end with recommended next steps. So it's a balanced approach where the student is not necessarily only seeing the negatives, they get the positives as well. Because I would never leave blank the session that talks about where they did well. Always make sure you point something out to the student.
Yeah.
So that's the order that it follows in terms of their formative feedback. And even on the final papers as well, final assessments, they do get feedback, especially if a student has failed and needs to resit the module, because they will need that to improve. So that's the format that it follows. Outside of that, on a daily basis in the classrooms, so lots of questioning, as I said, I am known for that. If you're coming to my class, you need to know that you're prepared to answer questions. I ask a question, nobody's answering, we will sleep in that classroom till somebody answers. Okay, of course, I will break the question down. If I need to break it down 1,000 times, I will, but I will never spoon feed them, those answers. And it's all to get them to think critically. And I always say, even if you get an answer wrong, it does not matter. That's why we're in a learning environment. You don't have to feel like your answers are accurate, So asking them those questions and then giving them feedback when they respond. So if you got an answer wrong, I need to be able to tell you why you got that answer wrong, not just say, no, that's not correct, and move on to the next person. So we're able to have that dialogue where I'll probably be like, explain to me how you came up with those answers, and more than half of the time they're able to self-correct, or you're able to sort of guide them to the right answer. You barely have the student being blanked out at all. So that's the way that we give feedback in the classroom. I also do a lot of discussions leading up to the assessment. So most of the things that we're teaching and we're learning, I make sure that I always connect it to the assessment. Because if we're learning something which is related to the assessment, I would say, so in your assessment, you will find that this question is there, and then we bring up the assessment as well, and I say, this is how you would go about approaching it. So by the time they get into their, final classes, they're all clear on the various topics that we study. They all know and they're all prepared to answer the assessment even before they get to a revision class. Yeah.
Brilliant. This is really good. So how what advice would you give in anyone who is interested in getting in to teaching and the like?
I would say just go for it. It all starts with if you have the interest for it, if you have a passion for it, if you feel like it's an area where you have transferable skills. As I said, I never had like a teaching background, even though I had those small experiences when it came to like the classroom. A lot of skills I have transferred. Okay? And especially in the UK, I would believe this is becoming like a global thing as well. For university students, we're always trying to get lecturers who have experience in industry. Okay, not necessarily people who are experienced in teaching. So that's really never the focus. That's never the criteria for lecturer positions. I would say, it wasn't the case for me, anyways. So as long as you have industry experience and skills that you feel like you can transfer into the field, just go for it. Yeah. And I remember when I went for my interview, there were just a few women. I think there were two. There were lots of men. So I would always encourage more women to get into lecturing, especially because it was a tad bit intimidating. Okay. And even going back to how I got into lecturing. So when I got that email, when I started to look into lecturing, believe you me, some of the things that I was Googling was how old is the youngest lecturer in the UK? Because I always had this notion the lecturers were really old people, people who've worked in industry for a long period of time. Now they're tired and they're finding, people to share the experience with. But that's not the case. You can even juggle the two, so you don't have to necessarily leave your career to get into teaching. You can get into part-time roles. You can get into freelancing. A lot of my colleagues are doing that. So if you don't want to get into full-time, there are other options there for you. There's flexibility. So if you just want to test and see if it would be a great fit for you, then I would encourage that you can start off as a freelancer, or you can start off as a part-timer, and then have
Right.
that gradual progression as you get along. But yeah, definitely go for it, especially
Mm.
when it comes to women. When it
Yeah.
comes to more technical modules like advanced project management, like
Mm.
programming, we need more representation. I
Mm-hmm.
remember when I first started, somewhere in my first month, we
Mm-hmm.
went for an after work networking event, and I
Mm-hmm.
had a member of staff come up to me and we were talking. So I said, what department do you work in? She
Mm-hmm.
told me, and she asked me what department that I worked in. And when I said I was a lecturer, she was extremely shocked.
Wow.
And why do you think that is? It's because of representation, especially seeing
Right.
someone as young as me. So, it took me back to when I was also Googling how old is the
Mm-hmm.
youngest lecturer, how many women go
Mm-hmm.
into lecturing, because she hadn't seen that before. So she was
Mm-hmm.
shocked, and she said to me, this is really inspirational, blah, blah, blah. And
Mm-hmm.
I was really excited to see that. So I think if
Mm-hmm.
more women in
Mm-hmm.
lecturing, it would be absolutely fantastic, because women naturally have that knack for being able to build relationships and
Yeah.
caring more. So when it comes to that lecturing instinct that we have,
Mm-hmm.
so I think, or I believe, that we're naturally able to be more student centric when we're
Right.
in these type of positions.
Wow, brilliant. So you're by being in this path, you're in inspiring women who look up to you and basically then their confidence to try this out which is great.
Yeah, so I'll just chip
So
in that
yeah.
I also had some students who were females who had some experience teaching, say secondary school or something. And at the
Mm-hmm.
end of the modules, they came to me and said, you know what, because of you, now we actually want to go back into teaching.
Oh,
So that shows you that even the students are looking and they're paying attention, and inspiring
yes.
them. I had a group that I just, and then this was a guy came to me, he said, well, you know
Mm-hmm.
what, I want to get into lecturing. So I had a conversation with him where I was
Nice.
asking, what's drawing your interest? Da, da, da. He said,
Mm-hmm.
I've always had it at the back of my mind, seeing you do it as young as you maybe, we don't know my age, I think some of them
Mm-hmm.
think I'm maybe 18 or something, because I look younger than I actually am. But he was like, I
Right.
really want to get into it. And it turned into a full blown conversation where I could actually see that he
Okay.
was very interested and not just saying it for the sake of it. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Oh, nice. Lovely. So would you say that a specific personality traits, is required yeah, to be or in one can do it.
Honestly, I wouldn't say it requires a specific personality trait. I think
Okay.
anyone can do it. So if
Okay.
I have a look at the pool of lecturers where I work and my colleagues, we're all very, very different in terms of our
Mm.
personalities and the styles that we use. So you have more people, some people who are very extroverted. You have people
Okay.
who are very introverted. There's that mixture. We all come with our unique skills and experience. But
Mm-hmm.
for me, it's about knowing the group that you're teaching and how you handle them. So, because
Okay.
every group is different, so you cannot have a one cut fits all type of approach. Every group
Right.
is different. So you have some groups where they want to engage, you're very bubbly, and then you have some groups where they're calmer. You probably have just one, two people speaking, and you have to do like a lot more exact, a lot more energy to get them, out of their shell and engaging and so on and so forth. So in the same way that the students vary, lecturers and tutors vary as well. I think maybe some of the basic skills that we all need are skills like communication and relationship building. Those type of skills I think you definitely have to have. And I don't think those skills are reliant on the type of personality that a person has anyways, because you can be extroverted or introverted and be a good communicator either way. It's not dependent on that. So for me, it's more about the skill sets that you have, those basic ones, like being organized, being someone who's able to think critically, someone who, loves research, because you constantly need to stay updated on what's happening in industry, because you want to keep the examples and discussions fresh and updated so the students get the most out of it. So for example, you had a question about AI that became, topic in a lot of our classes. So if you don't know all of these things, you're not able to incite those type of conversations. So for me, it's more about the skills you have and the attitude that you have towards the profession more than your profession necessarily. I mean, your personality, sorry.
Right, brilliant. So in what ways do you think that educational institutions can create more inclusive and supportive environments for women in academia?
So I think maybe they can have some policies that are more friendly to women. And it's cut across, all other industries, I feel. So it's things like more accommodating, maternity leave packages, more hybrid working options, because lots of women, at one point or another have to juggle being a mother, both the profession. So if you're able to have those, hybrid options. So I teach typically maybe 3 times in a week, at most 4 times in a week. I've seen other lecturers, have these type of schedules. Haven't had that yet, fortunately. So once you're able to have that flexibility, and as I mentioned, some people are in part-time roles, some people work as freelancers where they're able to pick and choose when they want to come in to teach. So when there's those type of options and it's not too rigid, then I feel like it would accommodate more women, because teaching can be very intensive, especially if you're doing it every single day, because you have to be doing research a lot. So you're combining research with teaching, with marking, which is also very, very time consuming. Then you have to have those, days where you're able to, stay home or maybe be in the office, but not necessarily be, teaching on specific days. So those type of policies, I think, would make way for more women. Also, I think that institutions can make a more conscious effort at, hiring more women. So maybe they can have, higher quotas for hiring women. Not saying to hire women for the sake of it. Obviously, look for people who are competent. Correct. Have that in the back of their minds so that we can have more representation. Because as I said, when I went for my interview, were 2 women versus however many number of men they were. Very, very experienced. So it was intimidating at, a certain point in time. And I thought to myself, why is this the case? This is hiring management lectures. So it's not just, those like engineering courses and stuff like that you would think are more, men are more inclined to go in for. It was a mixture of everything and anything. Right. So that just even tells you from that setting that we definitely do need more women. Also, I think that they should make some provisions for more women in leadership in education. So aside from just being a lecturer, moving into positions of like model leadership, award leadership, which are all things that I am also starting to consider. So obviously started off this career with no direct qualification for teaching. I have been taking my postgraduate degree in teaching and learning. So while I've been acting as a teacher, I've been a student myself. So when my students complain and say, we're struggling with this assessment, we don't have enough time, I say, I'm struggling with assessment. So we're all in the same boat. You don't have any excuse, So once, as a woman, if you have those type of qualifications as well, then you're also able to rise through the ranks when it comes to it. And I think when it comes to higher education academy, across the UK in general, they can also have more women, when it comes to like curriculum design and program design. So it's not just on the teaching level, but the actual, creation of the different programs that we have rolling out to students and hoping to churn out, the standard and level of students and education that we want, nationwide.
Nice. So for the women, especially the younger women who are listening to us today, you don't necessarily have to be in the classroom. There's different positions that they can explore. So thank you for being that role model for them. So finally, before we go, is there anything you would like to add?
I think my final words would just be for everyone to think of ways that they can, impact the lives of, people around them and the society in general. I think that as people, we should all be not just thinking about ourselves, but thinking about the greater good. And this is something that I always drum home to my students, especially when we're talking about like goal setting and finding your path and stuff like that. Or when I get an opportunity to give like a presentation to students who are on like development plan or course or something like that. So I always say, look for an area that you're very interested in, an area where, what's the one thing that if you had all the money in the world, you would want to change? And I think everyone would have at least one answer to that. And you'll your way to do that. Okay, as we've been speaking about teaching in general, higher education, if you feel like that's your calling, definitely go into it. As I mentioned, you don't necessarily need teaching experience. And as you also called out in the end, you don't have to be inside the classroom. You can be doing curriculum design, program design, you can be part of quality assurance, quality enhancement, even be responsible for, center experience for students. So if you're into event management, project management, if you have other type of skills, you can still go into higher education, because it's not just about what students learn inside of the classroom, it's about other auxiliary services that they have. We have like academic support, tutors and teams, we have English speaking teams, we have teams that help students with referencing. So there's so much that you can do in this field. So I say, find where your interest lies and just go do it. And I'd like to say a very big thank you for having me today. Obviously,
so much for coming in.
I've been begging a part. I've been saying to her, when is my interview coming?
Exactly. The time came.
I'm glad that a slot finally opened up for me and been able to share my experience. And this is really great. And I'm hoping to do more of these type of conversations and engagement more.
Brilliant. Thank you so much. And can you share with us your profiles, like if you're on LinkedIn, so people can follow you and follow your work and connect with you as well.
Okay, so on LinkedIn is Amma Asiedua Akoto. Okay. I think this recording will probably have my name spelled out, isn't it? So
yes.
Yeah. So it's Amma Asiedua Akoto on LinkedIn. Yeah.
Brilliant. And are you on Instagram as well? Do you want to
Yes, I am on Instagram, although I'm inactive. I would encourage you to still follow me, and I'll definitely follow back. We'll just do lots of interaction. So Instagram is Mame, so MAAME Asiedua ASIEDUA with an underscore. That's on Instagram. Yeah.
Cool. Thank you so much for joining us today as our guest, and thank you all for tuning in as well. And I'll see you on the next episode. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.